Right. Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock, and thanks for joining our next session. We're really excited. We got a great panel, and I think there'll be a lot of great tips to pick up on here with the really great insights that you're going to hear from our panelists today. Before doing that, let me say thanks to Jeff and the good folks at Wilmington University. We can't do these kinds of things without sponsorships, and so we appreciate their contributions to the education community and all they do for workforce development and training and all the kinds of a broad array of things that they do. So let me ask Jeff to bring us greetings from Wilmington University. And Jeff, thanks again for you and everybody there for your sponsorship for this session.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Like Michael said, my name is Jeff Martino. I'm the director of the Partnership Center here at Wilmington University, and it's an honor to partner with the State Chamber and sponsor this session. Wilmington University, or WilMU, as referred to by our students, has been successful since 1968 at making the dream of higher education a reality for our 20,000 current students and over 60,000 alumni. A nonprofit, private open access institution offering more than 150 undergraduate and graduate degree programs and 80 dual credit certificates, we focus on the needs of the adult learner with online course formats, affordable tuition, and curriculum that emphasizes real-world skills. To learn more about how WilMU works for our students, our partners, and community, please stop by our digital booth or connect with me directly on the app. Thank you again and enjoy the session. Back over to you, Mike.
Great, thanks. Thanks very much, Jeff. Appreciate that again. So let's get into it. Let me introduce our two panelists today. You're going to hear first from Clara Mattucci. Clara is the Vice President of Operations at GillespieHall. It's a public relations firm in Hockessin that serves a whole range of local and global clients. She's been working at the firm for about 10 years, almost a full decade, and she specializes in social media for business. And then we're going to hear from Joe Giordano. He's president and managing director at Whisman, Giordano and Associates. He's got over 15 years of experience in public accounting. The firm has won numerous awards, including our Superstars in Business Award. So with that, let me take a pause and go on mute. And Clara, we will start with you because in the whole chicken and the egg thing, what comes first, the marketing or the sales? Probably makes sense to kind of spread the word about you and market, and then we'll hear from Joe after you about how to make those linkages and close the sale. So Clara?
Wonderful. Well, thank you and good morning, all. Now, talk about a pivot. Networking, when we talk about shifting business to online, networking is one thing that really doesn't translate, and yet here we are. So the app has been great, really enjoying connecting with all of you, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. So as Mike said, I'm Clara Mattucci. I'm the Vice President of Operations at GillespieHall, and I'm also a behaviorist with a social science background. So GH as a PR firm, public relations, really that means connecting people and connecting with people. We're building relationships, we're deepening loyalty, we're telling stories. And those things are all really hard to translate to an all digital environment when we can't be communicating face to face. And now the end goal, of course, of all of this is to strengthen reputations and grow businesses, which is what we all want to do, especially now when there's so much uncertainty. So while connecting people and connecting right now personally is challenging right now, it's also all the more important. So we have to adapt, and we will continue to adapt. And there are some really great options out there. Now more than ever, consumers need to hear from the businesses that serve them. They need to understand how we can help them. And that's what public relations and marketing is essentially, is communicating that core value that we are bringing to the table and how we are enriching their lives in meaningful ways. So how do we do this when all of our consumers, our audiences are facing screen fatigue, they're under extreme pressure, they're bringing different personal challenges to the table. They may be caring for elderly parents or relatives, or they may have small children. They're sharing workspaces with family members and finding out if they like their family or not when it all comes down to it. And they're stressed, they're tired, they're feeling isolated, and there's all this uncertainty. So how can we break through that noise, that extreme emotional pressure, and get through? So that's just it. We have to understand where our audiences are in order to be able to connect with them, literally and figuratively. So as a behaviorist, I ask questions like, what are our audiences experiencing? What's important to them? What do they need? What do they want? Where are they getting their news and information? And what physically, where are they when they are accessing those sites or tools? What feelings are they having? When are they coming across information? When are they looking? And when are they just looking to get a very specific piece of information and move on? What brings them joy and what's stressing them out? And by understanding at least the answers to some of these questions, then we can go to our audiences. And that's what we have to do now more than ever. When we talk about building brands, a brand is not a logo or a visual identity or your mission statement. It is the feeling that people get when they think of you. It's what they say about you when you leave the room. And so our job is to communicate that. In our business, going to our audiences in order to reinforce that brand relationship, that means just checking in with our existing clients, and starting with existing clients is the most important place to start, because in addition to your employees, they're your brand ambassadors. So we just check in with them. We ask targeted questions. How are you responding to the latest state of emergency update? What is your industry doing? We noticed they're making some changes and new recommendations, and how are you adapting, and how are you communicating that to your public? They might not always go for our suggestions the first time around, but when the time comes and they're ready to move, they know we have their backs. So the most important thing we can do is just check in, and the most important question we can ask is, how are you? How are you doing? How are you holding up? What are your challenges? So we start with our existing relationships, checking in on the needs. How can we meet those better? How can we connect? We listen, and we give our existing audiences something to talk about. The second, a really fast second to that, is to be human and empathetic and be sensitive to the places where our audiences are. So what do they need to hear from us? Say only that. They don't need to know everything we know, just enough to make their lives easier and provide our value to them. And one of the things we've seen for our clients who have very active social media presence is their engagement has just skyrocketed, starting about March 16th, because consumers have very specific questions, and they trust that they have places to go to get the answers to those questions. And the two-way conversation has just, it's amazing, the exponential growth. Because we are actually having conversations. And so that's a valuable tool, not only to communicate, but also to get that feedback you need to better serve your community. And if you don't have an active presence, it's not too late to start one. So no worries. The third key piece from a strategy standpoint is to be decisive and clear about new processes and policies, and use every channel you have at your disposal to share that news. We know audiences need 8 to 13 touch points approximately before they're actually going to pay attention, before the message sinks in, and then before they take action. So we really do have to communicate frequently and across many different channels. Now, when it comes to events, rather than just going virtual or taking operations online, we advise our clients to get to the root or the goal of what we're offering and what we are trying to accomplish with this service, and look at new and creative ways to deliver this differently in a new environment. If we don't have anything concrete to share yet, something is still in process, we're still working on it, there are some kinks, we try to share as much as possible in our thought process so the community feels a part of that community or communication, and we can get some feedback along the way. For managers and owners, another great question is to keep your finger on the pulse of how your employees are doing. Because when we talk about the brand ambassadors, who is really going to be talking most about you during this time to their friends and family? The people that work for you. So how are you handling the shift to remote? How are you communicating? Do they have the support they need? And do they have something wonderful to share about you when they're having those conversations and being asked the question, how are you doing? And one thing that's really key about that is that they are leveraging their connections. And that's a great way to amplify. If you're a marketing department of one person, for example, you probably are not, even if you're a company of one person, use your existing network. And LinkedIn is a great way to do that. Joe's going to talk about cold and warm and hot leads, I think, but PR and marketing is really about setting that substrate. And when we talk about the sales funnel, we're sort of bringing people into that process. And so LinkedIn is a great starting point for that, to warm up cold connections, even go back to people, maybe somebody you met 2 years ago and haven't talked to again. Just check in with them and see what they're doing differently and how they've been holding up. And keep in mind that two-way communication. But when it comes to marketing and PR, the question that it always comes back down to is, what is the value that we are providing? And to continue to provide value on every channel that you possibly can is the best way to lay that substrate and start pulling people into the fold and show them that you really care about them in the spaces where they are. So quick strategies here: intensify and personalize your social media. If you don't have it, start it. Webinars are a great tool for maintaining existing relationships and also for continued learning. A lot of people are using their time in their new environment to get up to speed on something different. And that's also a great way to have that two-way communication. Get personal, get back to the basics. Handwritten notes, or even a card that looks like it's handwritten. Something that feels like, I really see you as a human. Text and email updates are great, and especially if you keep them really short and just sort of a steady stream of up-to-date information. And then the undercurrent of all of this is storytelling. So the story is about the value that you provide, but there are so many different forms that that can take. So great channels for that are some emerging local media, like the Town Square Delaware is a good one, up and coming, Delaware Live. They're really gaining traction in communities because they are so embedded in the places where the audiences are. And also existing relationships like the Chamber. They're always leveraging and elevating the things that the members are doing. Prosperity Partnership, the Delaware Bio, other trade associations, they're all there in part to share the work that's happening and connect resources. And it doesn't hurt having great stories. So that's a good starting point. If you want to tell a story, then make one, make something happen. A couple of great examples that our clients did right off the bat, a chemical research company started donating PPE to local first responders and food banks. And they made their own hand sanitizer and distributed that around the community. We had hospitality groups whose restaurants were shut down, delivering meals to healthcare workers. And so there are some really good examples. Funeral homes providing live streaming for the first time. Really good stories that then that's something that you can share that's of value, and that's really going to get people excited about the good news in Delaware. So I could go on. There are so many ways to do this, but I'll leave it there. And Joe, I think, is going to pick up really nicely. Looking forward to the Q&A and to connecting with all of you.
Okay,
Clara, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
well, Clara, that was great. Joe, before I pivot to you, Clara, a couple things that jumped out at me during your presentation. You can be thinking about these while Joe is talking, and I'm going to ask you to comment on a couple of these things. And then, Joe, when you're done, I'll kind of give you a couple of heads up on things I'm going to ask you too. But Clara, so for a lot of our small and medium-sized businesses, what's a realistic budget to have to actually have a program and take, advantage of a firm like yours? And then, also then what are some of yeah, and there's a difference between just kind of like posting something on social media once. That's not a program, right? That doesn't build a brand, as you said. So talk about that. What's a real program look like? What's the right cascade of things you can do if you're on a limited budget, you're a smaller business, or even if you're a larger business? What are kind of the right cascade on social channels, et cetera? You don't have access maybe to big data, as we talked about that. So what are kind of some, and then also you talked about storytelling. What are some of the what are the best tips, relative to that? So, all right, Joe, let me pivot to you. I'll get Clara thinking about all that. You, sir, talk to us about sales, please.
You got it. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Clara, for getting us started. Before I jump in, I also want to thank the Chamber and the Better Business Bureau for hosting this event in a very unique way. I've been a frequent attendee over the past several years, and this is very different for all of us. So thank you. Thank you to Wilmington University for being a sponsor, and any other sponsors that may or may not be in attendance at the present moment. As Mike mentioned, I'm Joe Giordano. I'm the president and managing partner of Whisman, Giordano and Associates. We're a local/regional CPA firm. We work with clients all over the country now. We've learned that we can work with anyone. So we're going to jump into sales. And Mike, you used the word earlier, or the phrase, the chicken before the egg. I often like to put marketing and sales together, and it's a line from the movie Miracle. If anyone's a hockey fan, the legs feed the wolf. If you're trying to do sales without doing marketing right now, it's tough sledding, because you have to do, as Clara talked about, your branding. You have to have reputation. You have to be visible. You have to be out there everywhere. So it starts there, because, just jumping on LinkedIn, if you have nothing out in cyberspace or out in the community, it's tough sledding. And that's just the reality. So I'm going to talk about sales of professional services, because that's what I know best. And I'll share a few stories about some of our clients and some community members of what they have done to pivot in this new environment. The reality, sales of services in general, it starts with one word. And Clara mentioned it, it's relationships. And, how do you generate leads? How do you do all those things? Well, like Clara said, you start with your referral sources, and your best referral sources are not only your internal team members, but your customers and your clients. So if and it depends on the industry. In our industry, we have a lot of repeat customers. So it's a cyclical thing. If you've been a client for 25 years, we generally have an idea that you're a good referral. But if you have an industry where maybe you're in the residential construction industry and you have a repeat customer, you did a deck and then a roof and then a whatever. If it's a repeat customer, call that customer. Will you write a testimonial for me? Will you refer us? We'll give you a referral bonus, a discount on future services, or whatever the case may be. You have to leverage your relationships. It starts there. If your referral sources are bankers or lawyers, this is, I don't know if it's showing up because I have a screen. You can see it's a phone. It's not called a text messaging machine. It's not called an email monitor. It's a phone. Pick it up and call someone. If your referral source is an attorney, call them. Ask, like Clara talked about earlier, how are you? How is your family? You don't go right to, hey, can you help me? There has to be a relationship there, and that's where it starts. So generating leads and all of that, there are a lot of ways to do that. You can buy lists, you can use LinkedIn, you can do a myriad of things. And right now we don't really want to buy lists because a lot of us are struggling. A lot of businesses are having a hard time. However, there are publications that are local. If you're B2B, and I don't know if this is going to work, but this is the Book of Lists from the Delaware Business Times. And I believe they're a vendor that's in the app. I'm not 100% sure. They've been at the event each of the past. Mike is giving me the thumbs up, so I'm glad I mentioned them then. they publish a list every year of various industries in Delaware. You can use that if you're B2B and go through and page through and say, this would be a good customer for our industry or our company. Okay, now Clara mentioned LinkedIn. Get on there. See if you have mutual connections with people that work there, or, you know, maybe it's the owner, but there are decision influencers and decision makers. You don't have to get right to the decision maker. Making a sale like that is not reality ever in professional services. So that's your start. So work your referral sources, work to get that lead, and you have to chip away. I tell our internal people when they begin to move up the ladder and they have to start doing business development, which is what we call it in our business, you have to, number one, you have to ask, you have to generate those relationships, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Discomfort is okay. Rejection is okay. I tell people this, and I apologize if it may not be politically correct anymore. I'm going to try to keep it politically correct. Asking for a sale is no different than asking someone on a date. I can guarantee you I know the answer if you don't ask. I know it with 100% certainty. And yes, I'm an accountant, so numbers are my thing. If you ask, you got a shot. So do that. Pick up the phone and chip away. Second place is not a bad place to be. Eventually the opportunity arises. So that's where you're going to start. Once you start to chip away, and let's just say you get in front of a decision influencer or even, God bless you, get in front of the decision maker, be prepared, do research, know something about the company you're trying to sell to. I will share this story. I had someone cold call me about a week ago, maybe it's 2 weeks ago, and they asked me to spell my email address, and my name is in the email address. Needless to say, they did not get a second opportunity. Need to be prepared. If you can't spell the company name, that's going to be a problem. Be flexible. You know, I have prospects and clients and referral sources, some of which are willing to meet in person. You know, you wear your mask, you social distance, you know, maybe you're getting a cup of coffee and sitting outside. Others, and Clara mentioned this, you don't necessarily know if it's not a warm lead that you've known for a while, if they have someone at home that is immune compromised, or maybe they're immune compromised. You don't know. So you have to respect that. And if they don't want to meet in person, you don't push your agenda. It's not about you. Clara touched on this earlier. Listen. Listen. I learned in a Dale Carnegie course years and years ago. There's one question you ask every time you want to make a sale for services, and it's relationship selling. Tell me about your ideal scenario, and then quiet. Listen. Listen to their pain points. Listen to their, right now, listen to their panic. You know, a lot of businesses and individuals are either out of work, don't have their revenue that they normally have, and they're scared. You know, it's reality. However, you can be of assistance, and that's what you're selling. How can I help you? Now, be creative. I'm in an alliance with many other accounting and law firms, excuse me. You say the word lawyer and everybody kind of ducks sometime. And this is in a different part of the country, so right now it may or may not be realistic. One salesperson was doing, they would look up and find their prospect and look them up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and all of the other social channels, and they would try to learn something about the person. And they found one person that was as passionate about dogs as they were. So what they did was they called the person. They had someone make an introduction first. This was not a cold call. And they said, listen, like to talk to you about, our company, and I'd like to tell you about what we can do for you, how we can help you. And, in the current circumstances, I know meeting in person indoors isn't going to happen, but we both have dogs, and would you like to go to a dog park? We can bring our dogs. They can play with other dogs and run around. We can social distance, and we can have a short, brief conversation. And they used that to their advantage. And it was creative, and it was different, and it was unique. And you want to stand out in a good way. I mean, I wouldn't recommend showing up with a potential prospect with a red nose and one of those goofy colored wigs. That's probably not going to get you a sale. However, being creative and memorable is important. My marketing manager is on this, and she knows this, and I think a few people at the chamber who have known me a little while know this. The greatest compliment anyone has ever given me as a professional and someone doing sales is, Joe, I would never have known you were an accountant until you gave me your business card. And that's the best compliment you can make to me, because what's an accountant's reputation? Boring, rigid, numbers oriented. We're not exciting people in general as a reputation. So that's a great compliment. So how am I different? How are you different? Those are important factors. Clara talked about it from a marketing perspective, but it also applies to sales. Stay visible. You cannot go into a turtle shell right now. I know times are tough and budgets may be slashed and you may have to pivot. I can tell you with our company, we had a full marketing plan, and it was marketing into sales. It went in the trash on whatever it was, March 17th, 18th. I don't remember the exact date that we sent everybody home and started working remotely. It seems, in COVID years, it seems like 10 years ago. But you have to adjust, and you still have to be visible. Like I said, pick up the phone, listen to your customer, your client, your referral source. How are you? It's being genuine and being a caring person. People will want to help you. That's the reality. This is not, I at the risk of saying something I probably shouldn't, sales is not rocket science. We are not developing vaccines for COVID. We are not, sending anyone to the moon. It's as simple as ask, get in your target market, find your prospect. How can you connect? If, maybe you can have a Zoom meeting. I can tell you, I've had a few Zoom meetings with people that I have not met previously. It is a challenge. If you're shy, it's going to be very hard. Clearly, I'm not. I don't have that issue. And most people that get into sales probably are not shy. Just be open, have a conversation. You're not asking for the sale in the first conversation. If that's where you're at and you ask for the sale, the odds are is whoever you're talking to is going to say, that was a little aggressive. Don't do that. So it really starts that. And Clara, from a marketing perspective, talked about touch points. In sales, it takes anywhere from 18 to 30 touch points to make a sale. And some of those are direct, which is I'm having a conversation with you. And some are indirect, whether it's through social media, newsletters, mailings. We had some success as a firm earlier this year writing letters. We have a nonprofit practice in our firm, and we sent letters to not-for-profit organizations asking if they go out to bid, we would be interested. And we had a little bit of success. We actually won a few new clients. So going back to the old ways is working in some cases. I have a client that is also in a service industry. They got away from cold calling probably in the last 4 years, give or take. And they got out and networked. They went to events. They did those things. They took people to dinner and baseball games and whatever. And because you can't do that, there were no sports for, I don't know, 5-6 months, you know, whatever it was. There are no concerts. Well, I guess there's starting to be some outdoor concerts, but there's really not a whole lot of things like that to do. They started cold calling again, and they had some success. And they used whatever lists they already had, or the book of lists, or their state chamber, or their local chambers, or the Better Business Bureau. Anything that had members, they looked at and said, who could we sell? Who would be a potential customer for us? A few other sales techniques that I've seen that have worked, and I won't mention anyone by name, but there are 2 restaurants in particular that I know of that I saw because I was on their mailing list. They pivoted from, they did the takeout thing and they did all that. They pivoted and started being almost like a specialty grocer. So you could get restaurant quality meats and seafoods, and they even sold toilet paper and paper towels. And that was a creative way to continue to make sales in a situation where they couldn't. So it really starts there. You getting leads right now, it starts with whatever you can use. I use this book of lists every single year. Every year I go through it, and I poor Krista, who is on this, I highlight and I say, okay, I want to find out how we can get in the door here. So you have to identify leads and then find out how to get there. I can see we're at about 11:30. Let me just stop here. I could go for hours, and I don't want to do that. So thank you again. And Mike, I'll be quiet and let you ask questions.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. Let me give you a couple of heads up, things that I'll come back to you on. So how do you differentiate yourself from other firms? And maybe, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, maybe an example of a virtual sales call and kind of a cascade of events that led to the successful onboarding of a new client. So think about those. Let's go to back to Clara. Clara, so go ahead and come on off mute here in a second. So so let's say that you've got a limited marketing budget and you are trying to market yourself. What kinds of resources do you need? Differentiate kind of a one-shot, on social media. That's not a program. What's a program? And then what's kind of what are some of the cascade, especially like on social channels, because I know you have a particular expertise with that. So what's kind of the cascade that's recognizing that every business is different and industries are different, but what are some general tips that you could offer?
Right. Well, first of all, marketing is an investment. And so over time, it's going to pay off. But you have to know what you get out of it has a lot to do with what you put in. To work with a firm like ours, we customize every program. So there really is no one size fits all, even in the same industry. But in general, if we're expanding an existing marketing team of one, we usually start around what it would cost to hire an assistant, and you're getting 10 people who have a range of skill sets. So in terms of cost for outsourcing, when it comes to making your own decisions in-house, it really goes back to that same question, which is, where are your audiences? And that's the place that you should start. So if you can pick only one thing and you can do only one thing well, keep it regular, keep it consistent. That's the most important thing. And so you should really pick something that you can keep up with and then build on it over time. Social media is probably the best way to reach the greatest amount of people with, in terms of ROI, cost benefit. Social media is usually the best place to start.
Thank you for that. That's great. So Joe, as a proud alum of the University of Minnesota, during the Miracle on Ice, Herb Brooks was our coach. A lot of those guys were on our team. And excuse me, former player myself, certainly not at the collegiate level.
That makes two of us.
I wouldn't be doing this right now if I was. But anyway, so anyway, how do you differentiate yourself? And we'll try to rattle through a few more questions. So let's keep all the answers tight. How do you differentiate yourself from, your firm and competitors?
Well, this is one that I'm speaking as the majority owner of the company and the managing partner, and I think to some extent that's a better question for some of the other people in the firm who have joined us. We've had a lot of success with recruiting. We have clients that have left our firm and come back. We have people that have left our firm, gone to other firms and come back. I don't like talking about myself, but many CPAs, and this is worldwide, nationwide. In other countries, it's a different designation, but similar. They identify with their profession. And I have never wanted to be known as, there goes Joe, the CPA. I would rather, I always look at it like, when I die, what do I want people to say at my funeral? And I want people to say he was a good friend, he was a good person, he was a good husband, parent, whatever those things. And I think we live our tagline of building extraordinary relationships. It's critical in our firm. And if, the reality is in our firm, there are not many, what I would call bean counters. You can't hand anybody a green eye shade and throw them in a corner and let them plug away. And we really have what I consider a unique personality in our firm. And that's really what it is. This is a reality. Every CPA firm will tell you they're competent at doing taxes and tax planning and business consulting and accounting and auditing. And if they're not going to be in business very long. No matter how good they are at sales. And, I like to think that we've done something right. We've experienced from 2014 to 2018, we grew 100%. We doubled in size, and through August, and I happen to know because I just reconciled the August financial statements, we're ahead of our industry this year in terms of our growth, which if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, I would never have predicted that. We'll see about 2021, but I don't think that quite answers the question, but it's really starts with our team, and it starts with our group and how we recruit. And, it's all about fitting in with our team because our team fits with our clients.
Gotcha. Thanks. Clara, back to you. Data is such an important part of every company's DNA these days, large and small businesses. So whether you're B2B or business to your consumer-facing business, what are some of the more important data points that you might have at your disposal, but maybe it's not curated correctly? But if you had to provide just some thoughts about, maybe some actionable insights just lie already with that which you already have, what would some of your thoughts be, and what direction would you give the folks who are watching today about that which they already have?
That's something that's really important to think about. And the number one thing is contact information. So if you don't have your emails and phone numbers for your customer base and for anyone you've ever met, basically collected in the same place, start working on that for sure. Then once you move past that, from a behavioral standpoint, start asking those questions about what their values and pain points are. And if you can kind of start to create some categories, that will help a lot in targeting and tracking the movement of your audiences over time. Now, when we talk about contact information, email and phone is the basics. Email marketing, other good starting point, sort of easy entry marketing tools that I didn't mention earlier are blog and email marketing, like an email newsletter. Again, just at the frequency that you can manage with the resources you have. So having that information collected in one place so that when you're ready to launch that, you're not scrambling around trying to pull it all together.
That's great. Thanks very much. I'm going to ask you both the same last question. We've got just about 4 minutes left. So Joe, we'll go to you first, and then Clara, will come back to you. Storytelling, whether it's sales storytelling or public relations and marketing storytelling. Do you have any thoughts, tips? Take a minute, maybe two, to kind of share with us. You can either give us a quick example, or if you have a tip, that'd be great. So Joe, storytelling.
From a sales perspective, I mean, this one to me kind of ties together with marketing. Your story begins with what you're putting out in your marketing, and you have to be consistent in your messaging. You know, I would tell you the overwhelming majority of our practice development and our growth, especially this year, has come through referrals. And those referrals are because of the story we've told over 1973, that's 47 years. And we've been, you know, knock on wood, we've been very lucky to be around that long, and hopefully we're around another 47 beyond me. It really starts with that relationship and who you are. And everyone, this is Delaware. It's a small community. Everyone knows everyone. So if you have a bad reputation, good luck. So I know that doesn't quite answer your question, but it's the reality that I see from a sales perspective.
Got it. Thank you. And Joe, thanks very much for your presentation. Clara, back to you. The why. What's your why? What's the storytelling tip that you would offer, either by example or maybe just an industry technique, a professional technique?
Sure. Well, Joe really nailed it in terms of the brand story. There has to be some consistency there so that you're pulling from the same well. But when we're talking about a marketing program, one of the things that we do is create these kind of micro stories. So what is an example of a time when we were embodying our brand message? And that should be very human. So even being able to look at an interaction between two people is a great way to do that, or a couple of groups of people, or share something that is just really relatable, that feels like it's a human communicating, not a company.
All right, that's great. Thanks for that. And Clara, thanks very much for your presentation and insights as well today. Well, I want to thank both of our panelists. Again, I want to thank the good folks at Wilmington University for sponsoring this session, and all of our sponsors for the event today. Let me wrap up with a tip on our scavenger hunt. Now, to show that we have been very thrifty with our membership dues dollars, Kelly has spared every expense. I know I've got it reversed because I'm not revealing it quite yet. I don't want her to come marching in here, but you know, we really went low budget on revealing the scavenger hunt tips. So without further ado, here is your scavenger hunt tip. Sell, sell, sell. And with that, let us thank everybody again. Joe, thank you very much. Clara, thank you. Jeff, appreciate you. Thanks, everybody. And everybody have a great rest of the event. And thanks for everybody jumping in on virtual networking. This is going to be with us forever. We're all breaking new ground, and it's just great to practice it and kind of make it part of our everyday life. So thanks, whether you're in sales, marketing, or anything else. Hopefully you found some really great stuff here. So thanks again, everybody.